I support unions. If you want to join a union, I support your right to join a union. Would I personally join a union? Honestly, I don't know. I think unions are phenomenal when they work, and they're really bad when they don't. Because we can talk about unions and the positive benefits they have, and don't get me wrong, they're there. You have a voice, you have a chance, a fighting chance. But unions are also super corrupt, and we see corruption at the top. If the union gets too big, it gets corrupt, and they end up working with the bosses to screw the workers even more. So, what are your overall thoughts on unions? And do you think
you cannot be sleeping with the enemy? First and foremost,
exactly.
You gotta stand with the workers, or you gotta stand with the organization. I know in Boston, I'm very familiar with tenant organizations or tenant union. So it's very important that if you're gonna stand with tenants or you're gonna stand with workers, that you stand with workers. If not, you are gonna be bought. You are gonna be bought because the big banks or the big corporations, they have money that the working class doesn't have. So in order for you to stand with them, you have to really make a decision that you're gonna stand with them. But it's not easy. I mean, unlike you, I feel like unions are very important. That's the collective power that I talk about. In order for you to get anywhere, you have to find common ground with other people and being able to stand as a collective, because you do it by yourself, you're not gonna get anywhere. So I know you said you don't like union, but try to do it alone. Trust me, everybody's trying to do it alone, always lose, because you don't have the economic power, you don't have the social power, you don't have the political power to stand against anybody by yourself. But once you work as a collective with your neighbors, with your coworkers, or with the tenants next door to you, yes, you're able to make things happen. I've seen it firsthand. I've seen places where folks were getting evicted, or folks were being pushed. The community is getting, but worse case scenario, everybody was getting evicted out of the community, but a handful of people, a group of people decided, you know what? We shall not be moved. We're not going anywhere. We're going to stand and fight, and we're going to do it as a collective, not as an individual thinking that I'm smart enough, I can do it all by myself. If you think so, you're going to get buried alive. But if you say, you know what, I have something, my neighbors have something, or my neighbors have something, and we all together, let's put our heads together and fight this and stand for what we want, stand up for what we want, guess what? Many times we have, just like a union, a workers' union, collective bargaining, where people are able to sign collective bargaining agreement that they're happy with. Typically, many times, a win-win. Because many times, even those, let's say you're fighting an employer, or you're fighting with a corporate landlord. Many times they're not thinking about some of the things that the tenants are looking for, or the workers are looking for. But when you sit down and have a conversations, many times, not all the time, but many times they get to understand and say, you know what, let's meet halfway. Let's have a win-win situation going on here. And yeah, you cannot do that though on your own. I will emphasize that over and over again. Collective power is the way good to go.
Well, on your own, you can't really negotiate for the whole. And let me actually clarify my point. I am not necessarily anti-union. I support if workers want to unionize, I fully support their right to form a union. So Starbucks right now is looking to unionize. If that's what they want to do, I hope they win. Amazon, same thing. I know how bad their working conditions are. I hope they win. When Biden crushed that labor union with the railroads, I was just like, come on, man. You're supposed to be the most pro-union, and you took the power away from the workers. That made me sick. However, the flip side is, when people speak about pro-union, I agree with all their points, but I do not hear enough of the people who are very, very pro-union saying, however, you got to be careful because of X, Y, and Z, meaning the corruption, because if they're not pro-worker, I am 1,000% pro-worker, but the union has to be pro-worker. And then the other flip side is, listen, if you got to do construction jobs all in New York City are all union, as they probably should be, right? Boston as well. My brother works is an engineer, so he's very familiar with unions. Unions, it takes a very long time to finish the construction, and unions make things very, very expensive. And some of the regulations are very, very, very good, and some of the regulations are very, 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 very tedious. And that's because of the unions. Now, that can be a good or a bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. So unions are not a perfect tell-all to any solution. However, they should definitely exist, and they should not be illegally busted, which they are.
Well, nothing is perfect. This is
no,
life.
Of course not. It's an option, right? Like if you're a worker, I'd rather have the option than not have the option. I'd rather have the option as an individual, be like, hey, is this union going to work for me? Great. Is it not? I'm going to pass. The options, it's all about options for me.
Yeah. Well, my very first job when I was like 19 or something, I worked in retail, and we had a union, and I remember vividly as if it were yesterday. I was able to get help from the union when I was being mistreated by a manager. I went to my union rep, and he was able to rectify that issue. And I remember being able to get my raises without any fight and without any, pleading or begging. And I was only 19 or 20 at the time. So I think it's very important to have representation. Representation matters, not just like representation as in, I look like you and I'm here to represent you, but yeah, you have to have representation in the form of people who believe in you, believe in what you stand for, believe in your rights, and they're willing to go and fight for you. Because if you don't have representation, just like so many times we talk about the housing market, we have families who are going before a judge and they don't have representation. They don't even understand the legal the legal lingo. And then here they are having to go and defend themselves in front of a judge. Whereas the big landlords, the corporate landlords, the big time landlords with multi-million dollars, they have representation. 90% studies have shown that 90% of landlords in this state of Massachusetts have representation when they're evicting a tenant. Whereas a tenant, less than 20% of them have representation because they cannot afford it. And then in Massachusetts, there's not a right to, you don't have a right for representation, a right to consult. You don't have that. So it's very important to know that for many families, they're already bombarded with so much that are happening every single day. It's so important that they have somebody who can help hold their hands when they're going through a process. So yeah, you're negotiating your contract at work. How many people can actually do that on their own? Most folks don't even want to talk about money.
Yeah, not a chance.
But that's why we say, let's talk money with friends. They're embarrassed. I was talking to a performer the other day, and he's like, Gabrielle, I love to perform. I love music. The only thing I don't like is that part where I have to negotiate my contract.
Right.
I need someone to do that for me because I know over and over again, I've been taken advantage of. I've been paid less than I should have been paid for a job because I didn't know how to negotiate a fair and reasonable contract. So yeah, with housing, you have to be able to negotiate a fair and reasonable contract. Your rent increases. Why are they going up 50%? You have to be able to say, no, I cannot afford this. I need you to negotiate something lower. And in order for them to do that, they need to be part of a tenant union or a tenant association. Likewise, if you're at work and you're looking to negotiate a fair, reasonable rent increases, income, salary, guess what? You need representation. Yeah, it takes time, but hey, we all have time. We all have 24 hours, right?
Yeah, sometimes we don't have enough time because, like we said, we're all paying we're all working 2 or 3 jobs just to make 80. I can't believe you said 80% of their income goes to rent.